Hi guys, to get started with this tutorial you're going to be needing your basic skirt pattern drafted out, and I drafted out the length that I'm going to be working on, which is 46 inches. So from the waist all the way down to the floor length, it is 46 inches, and that's because I want this dress to be really long. So for context, this is going to be the waistline, this is going to be the hip line, and the next line right below is going to be the knee line, and thereafter I have the full length. Now the full length is going to be dependent on your choice and what you want. To move on, I'm going to be doing a slash and spread in order to add volume to the knee part of this pattern, and on the knee line I'm going to be dividing that line into 3 equal parts, after which I'm going to be connecting those points to the full length. So we're going to be dividing this into 3 equal parts. These lines are going to serve as my slash lines because I'm going to be doing a slash and spread in order to achieve fullness along the knee area of this pattern. So I'm just going to be grabbing my pattern, my scissors rather, and I'm going to be slashing the line. In order for me to spread, I'm going to be getting a fresh pattern paper that I have not done any work on, which I'm going to be placing underneath my skirt pattern. I would also align the center front of my pattern with the edge of the fresh pattern paper that I'm placing underneath. This is just to place the both of them together, making sure that one does not slip over another. After that is done, I'm going to be grabbing my tape and I would measure the width of my spread. For this pattern, I am using 7 inches for the width of my spread. Yours could be more than this, yours could also be less than this. So if you want more fullness, you could mark more than 7 inches. However, for this pattern, I'm going ahead with 7 inches. Once that is done, I'm just going over to use my paper tape to place my original pattern down to the spread pattern that I'm using underneath. I'm also going over to cut through the second slash lines, and I'm spreading just like I did for the very first slash pattern. I'll grab my tape and measure 7 inches, which is going to also be the width of my spread, and I'm going to be using a masking tape to place them together. Afterwards, I'm going over to use my pattern master to create, or rather smoothing the hem of this pattern. Now at this point, all your pattern paper does not necessarily have to meet up, but just make sure that you achieve a really fine smooth curve at the hem of your pattern, and that is what I'm going over to do. In order to keep my pattern much more stable, I'm going over to use a pattern paper to fill up the open spaces that I have there. This is just to prevent my pattern from tearing apart. I'm also going over to adjust the hem of this dress because I think while I was working, the pattern, the spread that I did shifted at some point, so I had to redo it. So I'm just going over to smoothing over the edges. Our pattern is ready, guys. Now let's move on to cutting. This is the fabric I'm going to be using. First of all, this is a doll face bridal satin, and I'm going to be cutting first on this fabric before cutting on the lace. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be placing my fabric on fold first of all. So we're going to be cutting this pattern on fold first. Thereafter, I'll place my pattern on it and then cut. I don't know if I remember to say earlier that while I was drafting my pattern, I had already accounted for the side seam allowance directly on the pattern. What this means is that I'm not going to be adding an additional seam allowance while cutting on the fabric. I'm done cutting, and here is what I have. This is the spread on the both sides. This crease line right here in the middle is the center front, and it's going to serve as a guide for us when we want to create the slit. From the center front crease line, I'm going to be marking 3.5 inches all the way down to the hem of this pattern that I've cut out, this fabric piece that I've cut out. Afterwards, I'm going to be connecting all of the points together with my pattern master. Once that is all done, I'm also going to be determining the depth or the length where I want the slit to start from. So anywhere near 18 inches, 19 inches, if you want it to be moderate and modest. You could also go higher based on how much you want to open. However, I'm going for 19 inches and I've marked that point right there. So what I'll do is I'm just going to be using my chalk to create an opening in form of this arc that I'm drawing. So at this point, feel free to be creative. You may not make yours as wide as this. I'm just going over to draw an arc sort of that widens at the hem of this fabric piece. I'll grab my scissors and then cut this out. After cutting it out, I would also duplicate this pattern on my lace fabric. I'm done cutting on both the lining and the lace fabric. So you can see what I've just gone ahead to do is to pin it together. So I'm just going to be showing us. So I went ahead to place right sides of the lace fabric against the wrong side of the lining so that the right side of the lining can reflect on the right side of the lace. I don't know if you get what I mean. So I'm just going over to pin the both fabric piece together all around the slit opening. I'll proceed to my sewing machine and sew it all around from one slit to the other slit. So you will need to be careful when you're sewing around that curve. It's pretty simple and not really a difficult task. Once you're done, you will need to trim any excess fabric you have along that stitch line. Give this a really good press and attach it to any upper garments or upper borders that you desire. So guys, I'm done sewing and I've worn it on my mannequin. This is the slit opening as I illustrated earlier. So if you found this tutorial helpful, make sure you give it a huge thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, kindly click on the subscribe button below and feel free to watch any of the videos on the channel. You might find one helpful for you. Take care guys and see you soon in my next tutorial. Goodbye.